On this Tuesday night, terrifying turbulence. Harrowing accounts of what happened on a Singapore Airlines flight.
The plane just dropped.
What passengers endured, what causes clear air turbulence, and why it's becoming more common. New calls for the House of Commons Speaker to quit what Greg Fergus is being accused of. Serial killer clinging to life, the violent assault in prison against Robert Picton. And when imitation is not the sincerest form of flattery.
That sounds just amazing.
Actor Scarlett Johansson's fury over ChatGPT ripping off her voice.
Global National with Dawna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Every time you board a flight, you know there is a chance of turbulence, but what passengers endured on a Singapore Airlines flight from London to Singapore was extreme. It was so rough, a 73-year-old man suspected of having a heart condition died, and at least 30 other people were injured. The Boeing 777 suddenly hit severe turbulence over Myanmar. People not wearing seatbelts were launched into the ceiling. The injured ended up being carried out by stretcher. Redmond Shannon reports on what terrified passengers say happened on board that flight.
The aftermath of extreme turbulence on flight SQ321. It is very rare on commercial planes, but when it does happen, it can be terrifying.
The plane just dropped, and it was extremely surreal experience. I remember 3-degree object, people's belongings, frames, cushions, teacups, plates, you name it, just start hurting through the cabin.
The Singapore Airlines Boeing 777 was about 10 hours into its flight from London to Singapore when it hit turbulence at 37,000 feet over Myanmar. It then diverted to Bangkok, Thailand for a medical emergency. The airline describes the extreme turbulence as sudden, but one passenger said the seatbelt light had come on moments before.
It was incredibly scary experience. Seeing the other people in the flight who had years in it, and there was a first-time corridor.
The plane was greeted by a fleet of ambulances and first aid stations as soon as it landed. The airline says at least 30 people were injured, some seriously. A 73-year-old British man died.
Maybe he's have a heart attack on plane or not, but after the doctor have to investigate his body.
Aviation experts say despite deaths being an extreme rarity during turbulence, the investigation will look to learn lessons.
Were the right information being provided to avoid turbulence? Were the crew being cautious enough in telling people to strap up when they should?
Singapore Airlines says 2 Canadians were among the 211 passengers on board. Global Affairs Canada says it has not been informed of any injuries to Canadians. The airline is flying the uninjured passengers on to Singapore. Dawna?
All right, Redmond Shannon in London tonight. Thanks. Extreme turbulence is rare, but there's evidence it's increasing, including clear air turbulence, which is undetectable by in-flight radar and difficult for pilots to predict. Clear air turbulence is invisible. It has nothing to do with clouds or storms. It's generated by wind shear, wind variations with altitude, which is concentrated largely in the jet streams. Scientists at the University of Reading in the UK found over the last 4 decades, severe turbulence has increased on many busy flight routes, including over Europe, the US, and the North Atlantic. And their climate models predict every additional 1 degree Celsius rise in global warming will further increase turbulence. Boeing is making a $240 million investment in aerospace innovation in Canada in partnership with the Quebec government. The money will support a state-of-the-art aerospace development centre in Montreal and Longueuil. It will be overseen by Aero Montreal, which aims to make Quebec a leader in the aerospace industry.
C'est le 3e site au monde pour la fabrication.
Premier François Legault says Quebec is the world's 3rd largest aerospace manufacturing hub after Seattle and Toulouse, France. This investment is part of an agreement by Boeing last year to invest in Canada in exchange for a $5.9 billion deal by the federal government to buy up to 19 Boeing-made Poseidon military surveillance planes. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was in Philadelphia today, meeting with union leaders, the state governor, and the U.S. vice president. It is the Prime Minister's first trip south of the border since announcing his government's renewed Team Canada strategy on U.S. relations. As Jackson Proskow explains, Trudeau is looking to shore up cross-border cooperation, no matter who wins the upcoming presidential election.
Though the audience of union members was friendly, the Prime Minister's trip to Philadelphia was all about playing defense.
More than ever, we should remind ourselves of how priceless a partnership like ours is.
Justin Trudeau was here to shore up Canada's renewed American trade strategy, an approach based on direct outreach to state governments and organized labor, working around the political uncertainty in Washington.
In this moment of turbulence, it's so important to strengthen and deepen our relationships with like-minded friends and allies.
Left unsaid is that the Trudeau government is deeply worried about the prospect of a second Donald Trump presidency.
It is to the benefit of Americans and Canadians to continue to work well together regardless of who's in the White House.
Trump has threatened to impose a 10% tariff on all foreign imports, even from allies. In Canada's eyes, tariffs are a non-starter, just years after Trump forced the renegotiation of NAFTA.
The new administration will make the choices that they make, but our position is that is not the deal that we negotiated.
Trade experts warn it's not so simple, and Trump could still make things difficult.
He knows what he wants right out of the gates. The president can impose those at least for a short period of time until Congress pulls them back. So that's going to be really disruptive for Canada.
That's why the stakes of the Team Canada approach are so high, a workaround for what may come around in November's election.
We will be there to defend effectively against unfair or punitive tariffs on Canadians, because we know it'll be a lose-lose on both sides of the border.
While the Canadian delegation is diplomatic about potential election outcomes, the Prime Minister did meet privately with U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris just moments after she had delivered a fiery speech in which she warned that Donald Trump poses an existential threat to American democracy. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Philadelphia.
Prime Minister Trudeau was asked today about the International Criminal Court's decision to seek arrest warrants for the leaders of Israel and Hamas on allegations of crimes against humanity. He neither supported it nor rejected it.
Obviously, the International Criminal Court is independent in its work, and I've said from the very beginning how important it is that everyone respect and abide by international law.
Trudeau did say there is a troubling sense of equivalency between the democratically elected leaders of Israel and those who run Hamas. Canada lists Hamas as a terrorist organization. In the U.S., lawyers defending former President Donald Trump have now rested their case in his hush money trial. The defense called just 2 witnesses. Lawyer Michael Costello's testimony aimed to discredit the prosecution's star witness, Michael Cohen. Trump himself did not testify, despite saying he wanted to and falsely claiming that he is not allowed to. The jury has been sent home now, and the stage is set for closing arguments next Tuesday. Deliberations are expected to begin the following day. Trump is accused of 34 felony counts of falsifying business records related to paying off adult film star Stormy Daniels for her silence about an alleged affair before the 2016 presidential election. There are calls for the Speaker of Canada's House of Commons to resign. Greg Fergus was elected as a Liberal MP, but he is supposed to be neutral in his role as Speaker. The opposition Conservatives say he's failed to do that and claim it's not the first time. Today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said he still has complete confidence in Fergus. Our chief political correspondent David Akin explains what the whole thing is about.
Greg Fergus has been Speaker barely 7 months, and he's already facing his second call to quit.
For the good of the institution, of Parliament, and the enduring interest of the House of Commons, I regret to say that the Speaker must go.
When will we put an end?
Conservatives were upset enough last month when Fergus became the first Speaker in history to eject an opposition leader.
Mr. Poilievre, I have to name you for disregarding the authority of the chair.
But even before that, Fergus had come under fire for several other instances of what critics said was partisan activity while he was the Speaker.
As being Speaker of the House of Commons,
he survived one vote of non-confidence only because the New Democrats sided with the Liberals.
I've made a mistake. I would I apologize for this mistake.
This time, the issue is an online event notice billed as a summer evening with the Honourable Greg Fergus. It invites fellow Liberals to discuss, among other things, how Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives propose reckless policies that would risk our health, safety, and pocketbooks. The notice was taken down. A spokesman for Fergus said it was published in error by the Liberal Party, and the party itself issued an apology to Fergus. Good enough for the PM.
I have full confidence in Greg Fergus as Speaker of the House of Commons.
And good enough for the NDP.
The Liberal Party of Canada owes an apology to the Speaker. The Liberal Party of Canada has shown profound disrespect by publishing that.
That NDP support will allow Fergus to survive another confidence vote if it comes to that. But what if there's a third or a fourth? As a Bloc Québécois MP said in the House today, there are still 150 MPs, all of the Conservatives and all of the BQ, who have no confidence in his ability to be Parliament's neutral referee. Dawna?
All right, David Akin in Ottawa. Thank you, David. There's a bit of good news tonight for consumers. Canada's annual inflation rate fell to 2.7% in April, down 0.2% from March. That's the lowest inflation rate in 3 years. As Anne Gaviola explains, the rate of inflation will play a key role in the Bank of Canada's interest rate decision next month. Anne.
We've now seen 4 months of the annual cost of living increase coming in below the Bank of Canada's 3% target ceiling for inflation. Price declines were the story for people shopping for household furnishings, clothing and footwear. Food inflation also cooled as the price of food purchased at the grocery store slowed to 1.4% annually. That is down from nearly 2% in March, according to Statistics Canada. You can thank big slowdowns in the price of meat, non-alcoholic beverages, bakery, and cereal products.
The trend is certainly the friend of Canadians who are looking for some rate relief on the horizon.
Higher prices at the pumps moderated the deceleration, and that's mainly because of higher international oil prices and gas stations switching to more expensive summer blends, as well as a hike in the federal carbon tax. Shelter costs jumped too. It's more expensive for homeowners renewing mortgages at higher rates, as well as for renters. In fact, rental prices shot up more than 16% in Alberta. That's double the national average and the result of increased demand, sparking debate in that province about the need to implement rent caps to limit how much landlords can boost prices.
Younger Canadians in particular have moved from highly unaffordable provinces like Ontario and British Columbia to more affordable provinces like Alberta, and that's put upward pressure on demand for rental units. Rents in Alberta are not controlled in any way, whereas they are in the rest of the country.
The Bank of Canada is paying close attention to so-called core measures of inflation, which strip out the most volatile elements like food, shelter, and fuel. Core is also trending lower. RSM economist Tu Nguyen says all of this suggests a rate cut in June is a no-brainer. The Chamber of Commerce's senior economist calls a June rate cut the main consideration. We'll have to wait and see what the Bank of Canada says at its next interest rate announcement, June 5th. Dawna?
All right, Anne Gaviola in Toronto. A notorious serial killer attacked. Coming up, what we know about the prison assault on Robert Pickton. Serial killer Robert Pickton is in critical condition after he was assaulted in the Quebec prison where he's serving 6 life sentences. Pickton was convicted in 2007. The remains or DNA of 33 women, many of whom were taken from Vancouver's downtown east side, were found on his farm in Port Coquitlam, BC. Neetu Garcha reports on the assault and the reaction.
Tammy Lynn Papin's determined steps echo the resolute sentiment she feels as news of Robert Pickton's prison assault reverberates.
Georgina Papin was my sister who is a victim of Robert Pickton. I don't wish no harm on anybody, but what happened to him, I really don't care. I believe in karma.
Quebec's provincial police service said a major crimes investigation is underway into the assault, which happened shortly after 5 p.m. at Port Cartier Penitentiary, involving a 74-year-old man with life-threatening injuries. The suspect, a 51-year-old man, is still incarcerated.
I'm glad because now he knows what it feels to what he done to Janet, my sister. I don't want to hear about him anymore. I'm just sick and tired of him
Correctional Service Canada confirms Picton was involved in a major assault on Sunday, adding the assault did not involve any of our staff.
I'm actually very shocked. When inmate Picton was at Kent Institution in Agassiz, BC, he had no interaction with any other inmate. He lived in a unit alone.
Alan Mullen, a former corrections officer at Kent Institution where Picton was once incarcerated, questions how and why Picton was able to interact with another inmate.
If and when Robert Picton dies, a certain amount of the truth dies with him. So it's not just about, sort of protecting him.
Correctional Service Canada would not confirm details reported in the Vancouver Sun that Picton was speared in the head with a broken broom-like handle by an attacker who allegedly earlier assaulted other inmates at the prison. The attack on Picton allegedly happened after the assailant was then released back into the same unit as him.
One of the primary concerns I have, obviously, is around the security of these institutions.
When you have the most notorious serial killer in Canadian history, there's a certain amount of notoriety that goes along with assaulting him or potentially murdering him.
He emphasizes the necessity of ongoing investigations into Picton's murders, particularly in light of compelling witness evidence suggesting he did not operate alone. Neetu Garcha, Global News, Vancouver.
Morning in Iran ahead, the funeral for President Ibrahim Raisi. Thousands of Iranians gathered in the streets to mourn President Ibrahim Raisi, who was killed in a helicopter crash on the weekend. His coffin was carried through the holy city of Qom. This is one of the series of ceremonies planned over the next few days. Raisi, as foreign minister, and 7 others were killed on Sunday in a helicopter crash in northwestern Iran. The cause is under investigation. French President Emmanuel Macron is en route to New Caledonia tonight in an effort to quell unrest that has left at least 6 people dead. Hundreds of French troops are said to have made progress restoring order over the weekend. Riots erupted last week in the French territory over voting reform plans approved in Paris. Local leaders say the proposed changes will dilute the political influence of the indigenous Kanak people. With the local airport still closed to commercial flights, Australia and New Zealand were the first to use military transport to airlift dozens of stranded tourists today. More repatriation flights are expected in the coming days. The first internationally binding treaty aimed at regulating artificial intelligence has been adopted by the Council of Europe. Europe's AI Act sets out a legal framework that covers the entire life cycle of AI systems and addresses the risks they may pose. The aim is to ensure responsible use of AI that respects human rights, the rule of law, and democracy. The treaty could become a global benchmark for businesses and everyday life. Under the Act, the EU Commission could fine companies that breach the rules as much as 35 million euros.
Let's get this party started, or whatever.
Sound familiar? Next, why Scarlett Johansson is voicing her concern about a new ChatGPT system. In our post-truth era, it can be hard to tell fact from fiction, and artificial intelligence is accelerating that. Now, a sobering new assessment by Policy Horizons Canada, a federal think tank, ranks 35 global disruptions that could reshape Canada and the world. It consulted 500 stakeholders within and outside government and found the number 3 threat is that the emergency response system is overwhelmed. The second concern is biodiversity is lost and ecosystems collapse. And the number 1 threat, people cannot tell what is true and what is not. It says with the information ecosystem flooded with human and artificial intelligence generated content, mis- and disinformation make it almost impossible to know what is fake or real. It is already happening. Actor Scarlett Johansson says OpenAI ripped off her voice for its newest version of ChatGPT, and she is furious. It sounds eerily like her. And as Mike Drolet reports, the technology is moving faster than any human or government can react.
Hey, let's have some fun. I'd like you to be super sarcastic. Everything you say from now on is just going to be dripping in sarcasm. How does that sound?
Oh, that sounds just amazing. Being sarcastic all the time isn't exhausting or anything.
ChatGPT maker OpenAI gave its ultra-realistic new assistant the name Sky.
but all anybody heard was Scarlett.
Is that weird? Do you think I'm weird?
As in the actress Scarlett Johansson, who voiced the AI in the decade-old movie Her. She willingly took part in the movie, but when OpenAI asked her last year to be its voice, she declined, which she did again after she claimed they asked her last week. It all became a bit of a joke.
Oh, God. ChatGPT has released a new voice assistant.
But OpenAI insisted they used a voice actor, adding, "To protect their privacy, we cannot share the names of our voice talents."
Do we believe that there's an actor out there?
I mean, who knows, right? There's no reason to think that they couldn't have found somebody that sounds an awful lot like her.
Human or not, Johansson's lawyers made sure Sky was taken down, her fears echoing concerns in the entertainment industry that AI could replace actors.
Should we be concerned with how human they're making it?
That's a great question. I mean, the number one rule in AI is to not try and anthropomorphize what you're dealing with. And yet researchers consistently kind of fall into the trap around it because of the way that AI is very different.
Yeah, it's different, but that line between human and AI,
I see a red apple on a plate in the center of the table,
is starting to fade.
It took us, 10, 12 years of experiencing the harms of social media before we thought, oh, maybe we should regulate this. I think we're moving faster now with AI, but we have to keep up.
How? Perhaps AI could walk us through it.
And then exhale slowly.
Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
That is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Dawna Friesen, the real Dawna for now. Tonight's Your Canada is Edmonton's Ice District outside Rogers Place. That's where Oilers fans celebrated their thrilling Game 7 win over the Vancouver Canucks last night. And now it is on to the next round. The Oilers are the only Canadian team left. They have 16 Canadian players on their roster. So if you want a Canadian team to win it, these are the guys to cheer for. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.